Welcome to Only the Bare Facts, a bold voice of truth, integrity, and transparency in a chaotic world. This channel is your destination for unfiltered stories, real-life lessons, and an unwavering commitment to the word of truth. Bear is an eclectic personality of raw grit and gentle kindness. What you see is what you get. Bear's eclectic interests have brought great adventures and exciting learning curves to his life, and here, he shares those experiences through seeking the truth in this world of deception and manipulation. Finding redemption in the light of God's truth, Bear's journey is a testament to resilience through suffering, experiencing death, redemption, and faith. Now a warrior for truth, Bear shares his mission to expose darkness, foster genuine connections, and inspire others to live their true identity through divinity, with authenticity, authority, and courage as sons and daughters of God.
Well, welcome to session 6 of Only the Bare Facts. Follow that ticker tape on the bottom if you don't mind. Send me a text message, send me a hello. Let me know what you think of the podcast and the content. If there's somebody you'd like to see me have an interview with on the podcast, give me your ideas. I really appreciate it. Share and subscribe. I'm on X, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Rumble. So check it out and give me a hand promoting this and making this go. So let's talk about the week. Holy, what a crazy week. Another one. So much in the news, all about crazy tariffs and the insanity of our Canadian government. Apparently, just let's all remember that Mexico and Canada are the problem children of America. Trump's running around telling the world that he's in power. He's firing FBI criminals, terminating people, removing security clearances, phenomenal stuff. And then, of course, there's the whole big discussion that we have with President Trump and our country about tariffs and why they're imposed. Now, it goes already back to Sunday. Sunday, I believe it was Sunday, Trudeau had that little press conference thing that he did that he was, I think, 5 hours late for. Of course, he finally shows up and has his little spew, and it started from this point. So let me put this in just so we can get a reference point for today.
I mean, I look at some of the deals made, I say, who the hell made these deals that are so bad? But with Canada, I have a talk with him, and you maybe know or maybe not. We're going to meet again or talk again at 3 o'clock, right after my next meeting, and we'll see what happens. I can't tell you what's going to happen.
That he could agree to change your mind on the tariff?
Well, we can always, look, what I'd like to see, Canada become our 51st state.
Okay, there he did. There he is, bringing it up again. Canada become the 51st state. You know, Trump isn't trying to interfere with the process here. What he's trying to say is there's a problem in Canada. It needs to be addressed by the government. The government needs to change. I mean, Trudeau prorogued Parliament. He resigned, he quit, and here he is yabbering off on our behalf, you know, as the go-between between the meanie pants just south of the border and this poor decrepit country that he's in charge of, that he's ruined over the last 8 years. So Trump is literally saying, hey, you guys, step it up.
We give them protection, military protection. We don't need them to build our cars. I'd rather see Detroit or South Carolina or any one of our Tennessee, any one of our states build the cars. They can do it very easily. We don't need them for the cars. We don't need them for lumber. We don't need them for anything. We don't need them for energy. We have more energy than they do. We don't need them for energy. So I say, why are we doing this? Why are we willing to lose between $100 billion and $200 billion a year? We don't need them. As a state, it's different. As a state, it's much different. And there are no tariffs.
So, you know, once again, Trump is outlining, look, you've got some options here. I know he's reaching out, and I know everybody gets pissed off. And I mean, Canadians in their right. So there's a hockey game, and what does everybody in Canada do? They boo the American anthem. So Trudeau, who's divided this nation over the last 8 years, who persecuted people who were protesting, who said, you know, protests should be available to anyone. Of course, the Palestinians are taking full advantage of that. But if you're driving a truck or you're in a trucker convoy or you support that, you're either going to get trampled by horseback by the illustrious RCMP, or you're going to have your bank account frozen. I mean, the world sees the corruption. The world sees the heretic comments of the liberal government. They're not stupid. Trump is not a stupid man. He's a pretty smart businessman. So, then what does Trudeau do? Once this all starts, out in his big press conference, he says this.
States and 10% on Canadian energy. A decision that, should they elect to proceed with, should take effect on Tuesday, February 4th.
Okay, so we know what happens. We know what came out of that. Trudeau and his smarmy little comments about his love relationship with the United States and our lovely neighbors. I mean, what did he do? Well, he stepped up and found out that Trump basically gave him an ultimatum. Sort your shit out at the border, get things done. So suddenly the Liberal government is doing something quickly and promptly. So it took President Trump to outline, look, you got to clean up your mess before the Liberal government would step up and go, hey, we need to clean up the mess. But hey, let's just stop drinking bourbon. That'll help.
Opting for Canadian rye over Kentucky bourbon, or foregoing Florida orange juice altogether. It might mean changing your summer vacation plans to...
This guy's going to tell me what I'm going to do for my summer vacation plans? When was the last time this guy did anything that had anything to do with benefiting this country? He's a narcissistic psychopath, according to Jordan Peterson.
Stay here in Canada and explore the many national and provincial parks, historical sites, and tourist destinations our great country has to offer.
So here he is continuing to patronize Canadians and tell us what to do. Why does this guy do this, and why do we let him get away with it? Let's look at one more segment. So this is just pieces of that spiel that he had on Sunday that we can talk through.
There are a number of different industries and regions of the country that can have greater leverage over the United States.
So now he's talking about our oil and gas that we have in Alberta can be greater leverage over the United States in his negotiation to have tariffs removed. We all know how that turned out, but this guy's suddenly ready to utilize the unity of Canada, Team Canada, and we're going to, we have some leverage with something that he's wanted to shut down. So suddenly, our heavy oil is an asset. It's no longer an environmental problem.
Thinks of the oil industry, for example. What is extremely important for me, and I think for all the premiers, is that no one region of the country or one industry carries a larger burden than anyone else.
We have always carried the larger burden for Canada. Since Canada started, this part of the country has paid the bills for those narcissistic prima donnas in the East, and that's not going to change unless we become the 51st state.
In standing up for Canada, we need to all be in this together. This only works if Canadians are fully united from coast to coast to coast to stand up for this extraordinary and beautiful country. And that's why, as we look at different measures, including non-tariff measures that we might move forward on, we will not be moving forward on issues that further divide the country, which is why we're working with all premiers to look at different ways we can encourage the Americans to step back from these trade actions.
So now he wants to unify the country. He wants to separate the country. When it's convenient for him, he wants to unify the country. In other words, he wants to demand more support from Alberta so he's got some kind of leverage. Let's carry on with this one.
Lumber and plastics, along with much, much more. And as part of our response, we are considering, with the provinces and territories, several non-tariff measures, including some relating to critical minerals, energy, procurement, and other partnerships.
So in other words, we don't want to jeopardize the oil agreement that we've got with the United States. We're going to maybe not use that as leverage, but we're going to try and make it all happen in such a way that we look like the good guys so that the Liberals can unite the country, that same country they've been dividing for 8 years. I could just go on and on about this guy. So, he has this conversation. We all kind of know where it went, how it happened. He got a 30-day reprieve from President Trump. And what did he need to do? Secure your border, stop the flow of fentanyl. These are things that have been come up with that can support and help this negotiation with the U.S. But let's remember, who do you think is making the decisions and who do you think is telling Trudeau what to do? I'm sure that Carney, once he gets this all squared away, he'll run to Carney and say, okay, Carney, what do I do? What do I do? And I'm sure he's going to tell you. I'm sure he's going to control that process and make sure that Carney is the guy who's making the decisions. I mean, this guy, I don't know if you realize, that's Carney, okay? WHO buddy. What was he doing in Davos a couple weeks back? He had no need to be there. This guy has billion-dollar investments in foreign pipelines, but doesn't want to have a pipeline in Canada. This guy is the worst problem we could possibly have in the Liberal Party. This guy was literally the voice and the puppet master behind Trudeau and all his economic decisions over the last 9 years. This guy's a serious, serious problem. You know, we need to understand that that's where he comes from. He is nothing more than the carny carnival. This guy does what he's told to do by the WHO, and he wants to totally destroy this country. So let's have a look at him on CNN.
One of the ways we define ourselves most easily is, well, we're not American. There is such a depth of pride that's not actually an issue.
Kind of a curious answer. I don't define myself as not being Phil Mattingly. How do you define being Canadian, and what did you make of Trudeau's comment?
So did you not notice he just laughed at his own puppet? He laughed at what Trudeau had to say and Trudeau himself. This is Carney. Okay, this is the guy behind the voice, behind the he's the puppeteer.
Well, I think there's many differences between our two great nations. One of them is that Canada's a mosaic, the U.S. is a melting pot.
Canada is a mosaic and the U.S. is a melting pot. Yeah, Canada, we have all these different cultures that come to this country. They bring all the baggage from the countries that they came from. They come here, they leech off of our system, they steal from the medical system, they utilize our politics and our democracy to continue to further their agenda, and that's the mosaic. And the melting pot of the U.S. is people come to the United States, they become Americans, they are Americans. Wherever they're from, they're Americans. Why are they Americans? Because they've got a constitution and a charter of rights and amendments that gives them the power and the freedom to actually live within a democracy and within the state. That's the difference between there and here. And this guy is talking on CNN representing Canada. Okay, he's never been elected to a political position. He doesn't represent this country officially. He is nothing more than the in-place puppet for the WHO in our Liberal government, because he's going to win the Liberal nomination. I mean, that's a given. And this is him telling the world, specifically America, what we think and how we view ourselves and America. Watch this.
Canada puts greater weight on social services, on healthcare, protecting each other. Canada has different ties. We have deep, deep ties with the United Kingdom through the Commonwealth. We have deep ties through Europe. We have a different approach to international relations. We're not the superpower. We're looking to support it. So we are quite different. But look, we love America. We love Americans. This is, as I say, one of the greatest relationships in the world. We want it to continue, but if it's changing, we too will change. And I would say, if I can, Jake, I would say the mood of the country has moved from one of confusion to a sense of betrayal, and now very much to a sense of resolve. And the resolve from Canadians is if the U.S. has changed, if it's changed its priorities, how the U.S. is going to treat us, we'll move forward on our own.
So is that a veiled threat? Did you notice that the relationship has changed, so we're going to change with the relationship? That sounds like a threat to me. That sounds like Carney saying, you know, we don't like how you play. We don't like how you play in the sandbox, so we're going to take our sandbox somewhere else. Okay, again, this is a guy who has billions of dollars invested in Brazilian and other world pipelines, but doesn't want to have an east-west pipeline. That's his answer. That's his solution. This is some guy that knows what's going on. He knows what's best for Canada. This guy's a crook. He's the worst case we could have. And here we have Quebec Premier was quoted this week saying, no plans for energy east at all, but maybe in the future. So how are we going to diversify where we send our product if we can't, you know, if we can't coordinate this country? I mean, we pay a tariff from province to province with products from each province. And apparently we pay more tariff to do that than we do the tariffs that are going to be imposed by the United States. So why is it that we've got all these assets in our country, all these commodities and all this product that we can share within our own country, but we have to pay a tariff tax to get something from British Columbia or Saskatchewan, Alberta to Ontario? I mean, these guys are corrupt, and we know that they're making the money. And then we have other people who represent our nation in a question time period on CNN. Watch this one.
It happens to be. I mean, we're talking about an entire industry, the backbone of the most populous province in this country, which could collapse in a week. And are you really telling Canadians that their parliamentarians shouldn't be debating, discussing, representing them, and deciding how to best address this? And what message does that send to the U.S.?
We'll make all the decisions necessary to support workers and businesses. So if that circumstance that you described turns out to be the case, obviously we would do what is necessary.
So you're not going to avoid it just to stave off an election, to be clear?
But again, therein lies the contradiction. The opposition parties have vowed at the first opportunity to cause an election. That's a guaranteed way to make sure that Parliament doesn't meet for 2 or 3 more months. So they can't have it both ways. You can't say, hurry up, bring Parliament back because we want to have an election, which would mean that Parliament would not be.
The timing is essentially set off by the Prime Minister deciding at the point he did to vacate his position. It's not the opposition's fault that he waited until he did.
I don't think the issue is, does the government have the necessary instruments and programs to support sectors of the economy and workers? The answer is yes. The politics of people parading around the foyer of the House of Commons with manufactured outrage, you've been around long enough, Ashley. That's a whole separate conversation.
So this guy's talking about prorogue Parliament. He doesn't care whether it's prorogued. He doesn't want to open it up so that the Conservatives can say, hey, we have a non-confidence, we need an election. What he wants to do, even though Parliament's prorogued, is the government is going to make the decisions for people in industry. That doesn't sound at all like a democracy. Not at all. I mean, that's insane. But what do you say about that? So next thing that kind of comes up in the world is Marco Rubio seems to be dealing with Panama pretty well. The Chinese need to stay in their lane, basically. Mexico is willing to give the U.S. 10,000 troops on the border to stop migration and drug shipments. I think somebody told me that 1 in 100 sea cans is scanned when it's imported into our country. Okay, so why do you need to have drug runners on or contraband runners on the Mexican border? Just put it in a sea can, because your chances are 1 in 100 that you're going to get caught with it. But whatever. And then Trump's got things squared away with Mexico, but not with us. And why is that? Because we can't seem to do what he wants us to do. Now, our 30-day reprieve will hopefully bring us to a better position than we are now. But what's going to happen? What are these liberal government peons going to actually do to make any difference in this world? I just don't get why we're waiting for these guys to do their thing. Meanwhile, environmental groups were all pissed off because Trump's administration bypassed their bullshit and turned the tap on in California. So now California has water. So if they have another fire, they'll actually have something in the fire extinguishers to put the fire out with. And then if we look at some other things that are happening in the world that we, are kind of, not really, aware of, because we've got this whole media frenzy on what's happening between the tariffs and Trump and the United States and Canada. This one's pretty wild. I want you to have a look at this. So these guys, Romanian mercenaries in the DR Congo, were hired to fight against the M23 rebels. So the M23 rebels represent the Tutsis, which is a genocidal group of people in Africa, in the Congo. And these guys were kicked out of the country, told to leave. They took refuge in a UN complex, and they were rounded up under the watchful eye of M23. So things in the world are happening that we're not aware of. And, maybe we need to wake up to some of those other things. It's kind of crazy. There's a lot of stuff going on. What else is happening? Well, let's see. So let's have some new statistics we can look at. Statistics in Canada. This is the Muslim population base in Canada has doubled in the last 20 years. 7 out of 10 were born in Canada. Look at the statistics. We don't talk about that right now because that's not something we should have a conversation about, apparently. But it also took some conversations with Donald Trump for the government to actually wake up and realize that 90% of gun crimes in Ontario are linked to weapons from the U.S. So all this gun confiscation and control of legal gun owners were the problem. Now we have the federal government politicians actually admitting and accepting the fact that it has nothing to do with legal gun owners. It's literally, what's it about? It's about illegal guns coming into the hands of criminals in Canada, and that's where the problem is. So now that we know it's 90% of gun crimes in Ontario are committed with weapons that are illegally imported to the country, how about let's look at now what have they spent so far? I can't even remember, but I think it's something like $17 million on gun confiscation, and not one single firearm has been confiscated from a law-abiding firearm owner in Canada. But the RCMP lost 500 and something guns in the last year. their own guns. They lost their own guns, but we're supposed to, us legal gun owners are the problem. But let's look at the funny stuff. So the funny stuff is always fun. That's what represents our country. Don't ever forget that picture. That's what Trump is afraid of. That's what the world sees us as. That's our leader. Holy. On another happy, fun note, I know that this is going to date me, but this one, when I saw this picture, it was just too funny to, you can't unsee this. You can't forget this one. This one's hilarious. So that's Ford, and of course our illustrious turd boy right there, and that's Gilligan's Island. I know that dates me. I watched Gilligan's Island on a black and white TV. I know, I'm old, but that's okay. That's kind of what's going on in the world. I want to show you one more funny thing, that this is something that nobody ever talks about, nobody ever discusses, but I want you to know that this is a real problem in the world. And of course it took Donald Trump, President Trump, to wake the world up to this atrocity that's going on. White crosses along the highway in South Africa. Each cross represents a farmer, white farmer killed. Every one of these white crosses represents a white farmer in South Africa that's been murdered between 2018 and 2022. Trump was the first person to finally call this out after years of silence regarding the plight of white farmers in South Africa. For miles. It goes on for miles. That's pretty crazy stuff. That's something that we're not paying attention to or aware of. Well, let's talk one more thing about Donald Trump. And so Musk and of course the Democrats got all panic stricken and worried about this USAID, right? At USSAID. So they started checking out, seeing where the money's going, and this is an example of American money that's being moved around that is for absolutely useless, wasteful stuff. And I don't know what the numbers are in Canada, because we never seem to be able to find out this information, what funds Trudeau is earmarking for the most ridiculousness of things, and they're never accountable. But you can't make this shit up. So $1.5 million program was slated to advance diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia at workplaces. And I'm just going to give you a couple of them. $70,000 program for DEI musicals in Ireland. $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. $2 million for sex changes and LGBT activism in Guatemala. And $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. Oh, I said that one already. $6.7 million to protect, listen to this one, biodiversity from wildlife crimes. What does that even mean? Biodiversity from wildlife crimes. So what, the Gemsbucks are running around trying to overpower the elands, or is it the warthogs are trying to fight with the impalas? I don't know. What is biodiversity from wildlife crimes? I mean, we got all these criminal wildlife out there. Boy, they better watch out for that. $44.8 million of food economic assistance for Venezuelan migrants into Colombia. So the U.S. government was paying $44 million to feed Venezuelans who migrated to Colombia on their way to the United States. This is under the Biden regime. Pretty and crazy stuff. $6 million for the WHO for health coordination and health surveillance activities in Gaza. Health surveillance activities in Gaza. And Trump wants to make Gaza part of America so that he can clean up the mess and give a nice, peaceful place for the Palestinians to live. $30 million for a multi-sectoral response in Gaza. Multi-sectoral. Multi-sectoral. So they're responding with what in Gaza, to what parts of Gaza are they responding with to the tune of $30 million. $3.5 million to help next generations of Georgia to be civically engaged. So they spend $3.5 million in Georgia to make sure that young kids can figure out that they should be activists in politics. How about $1.3 million for a support environment for LGBTQ people in Northern Macedonia. Of course, that's really important. Here's one for you. Oh, what about the $14 million they send to Afghanistan every week? Or the $56 million to boost tourism in Tunisia and Egypt? Or how about the $45,000 for scholarships, DEI scholarships in Burma? These things sound ridiculous. I mean, well, they are ridiculous, but it's America, so it's really not our problem. What do you think the Liberal government does with our money? They throw it around. They spend it on useless shit that we have no power over. We don't even know where they're spending it. Let's put all that aside. Another half week is gone. We've got some time to spend, and the next week, let's hope that we can see through all this bullshit and all this craziness that's going on in the world, and we can have a wonderful week. Enjoy the weather. I know it's freezing cold, but just know that it's warm somewhere else, and they're out riding motorcycles already. You have a great week. Thanks for staying on my podcast. Thanks for checking it out. Again, follow the prompt in the bottom. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Tell your friends about this. I've got some really fun stuff coming up in the future that I'd love to share with you. So I hope to see you soon. Thanks again.